Hey Rebel Scum, welcome back to another one of my informative Star Wars collecting sessions. Now, going to be a little bit of a challenge today. Divergence from what I've been doing. This isn't so much a transition or a history of what's available of a particular thing. I told you last time we'd be doing the Barge. There's only been one Barge, so I can't really do much on that. Not so much showing off the Barge, but showing off how to fill it out. So we're going to be going off all the recent versions of the characters that go in the Skiffs and the Barge. And I'm going to do a bit of a divergence from how I usually do it. I'm not going to have a 360 of each individual character. It would take a very long time. And I'd be going back between the character and the history of the character and the Barge. And it would just be like an hour-long video. We want to try to keep this in a tight 30 or less. So you guys are going to be coming with me today. We're going to be changing some perspectives. And I'm going to give you guys some up-close shots so you can see how I arranged the characters here. Did it very closely to the movie scene, watched it about 1,000 times to get everybody in the right position. So I'll give you guys a nice close-up and we'll point out the characters and go over the versions of the characters and the ones that I went with in this set. But of course, I like starting out with boxes. I can't give you a 360 of it, but here's that giant Barge that came from the first HasLab ever. This was released in 2019. Completely funded in the last minute. It's a sort of a success story on Star Wars collecting. Very excited when we all saw this announcement for the Barge, and very glad it ended up coming out and looking exactly like they said it was, better in my opinion. So in addition to that, we also got the Skiffs. I'll show you the box here as well. These came out in 2019 as well, releasing shortly after the Barge. And they were a great accompaniment. Now, I know some people will say that the two skiffs were actually different, so one only represents the skiff that Luke and company were on and not the second skiff, but it's all we got right now, so you can always grab it and paint it differently or however you want to do it. But those are our two vehicles we'll be looking at in this segment. And I'm going to bring you guys in close, and we're going to go over each skiff and the characters that are available so far to fill out those skiffs. Not going to go into the realm of customs. So these are all figures that you can purchase at stores or could have purchased at stores at some point. So why don't we come on in closer and I'll show you guys the skiffs. All right, guys, so here we go. I'm going to call this skiff number 2. Skiff number 1 is going to be where the primary characters were on. I'm going to be using a laser pointer to help me show you the individual characters here. So we're going to start out with the driver here, which is Potsnikin. Now, Hasbro has not made Potsnikin since 1998. You can see the package here on the screen. Essentially, he was from the Power of the Force 2 collection. Never remade this character. Oddly enough, on the back of the card, I don't really think you could even see him because the angle that this is shot at is at the front of the skiff where Luke is hopping on. You could see Barada there on one side, and you could see Brock in the front, but I think maybe that head in the bottom is Potsnikin, but he is not on the card, so kind of weird. So this character basically, really needs to be remade in the vintage collection line, so we have our driver. But even at the time for 98, he still looks really good. So I'm happy with him. I don't feel like they would need to do a whole lot more. I think he looked really good at the time, which was kind of surprising. He barely fits in there because he has this little jacket that sits on top, makes it really snug, but it was a lot snugger on the previous version of the Skiff. So on this version, he actually does fit in there, but again, it's a pretty snug fit. So after him, next up, and I'm just doing this in order by years, this Barada here. So originally he came out in the Jabba Skiff Guards 3-pack back in, I believe, 96, 97. But they released a later version of him in 06, and this was the Saga Collection Barada. Now, he's essentially the same figure, same tooling. They just went with a different paint scheme, and honestly, he looks a lot closer to the character in the film. They have not made a new version since then, so this figure has limited articulation. And he actually came with a shotgun blaster and not this force pike here. So I switched him out with a force pike from a different character because in the film he had a force pike. So it was kind of a mismatch of accessories there, so odd they went with that choice. But it was also the same accessory he had in that 3-pack. Next up, going forward to 2012, we have this Nikto here, and I think there's actually a re-release of him coming out soon if he's not out already. But this was the vintage collection, and this was number 99. And this is his correct accessory, and he looks pretty awesome. So he's rounding out the crew here. There's a lot of different Niktos and Weequays of the species we'll see through filling out the barge and filling out the skiffs. But they all have kind of different colored tunics. This one's unique because of that light blue tunic he's got on there. But yeah, he's filling out the rest of the crew here. And then we round it off with the 2019 Brock Starsher. Now, Brock Starsher here, he was originally released in the Black Series. This is the same exact figure. I don't think they changed anything on him. He has the same articulation, same design, same everything. Not a fan of that bronze force spike, but this is the same figure. They just released him on an individual card back and made him part of the vintage collection officially. He came in a 3-pack along with Vidane and another character I'll get to when we get onto the barge. But that was his release, and he came out around the time of the Skiff in 2019 as well. So they all kind of rounded each other out, and he was able to finish off one of the sets. Now, we're still missing a couple of characters. I think there were at least 2 other characters that go on this barge. They were humans, maybe 3 characters. So this is pretty empty. The Skiff, I mean, not barge. So this is pretty empty looking compared to the other one where we're only missing 1 character, which I'll get to in a minute. So we could definitely use some more people to round this out, essentially the attack crew or the backup Skiff. So that is Skiff number 2. And I'm going to transition now over and show you guys Skiff number 1. All right, so now we're on to our primary Skiff. This is going to be Skiff number 1. I'm going to refer to it as, just because it's got the hero characters on it. We're going to start with this little piece of scenery. I know it's not on the barge, but it's an essential piece here. And this is the 2008, I believe this was the Legacy Collection at the time, and that is the Battle at the Sarlacc Pit. This was a exclusive to Target. It came with this plastic piece, another plastic piece, and then the mouth insert for the Sarlacc Pit. And this little mini mouth could be removable, so you could just have the tentacles and the teeth here if you wanted to go for an old school look. This came with a Skiff and a whole bunch of characters you could see here. Pretty cool, pretty essential piece. Hasn't been remade since, so you're on your own getting that in the secondary market. You want to track that down. Starting with the characters, we're going to go with the oldest and newest, and our first is from 2011 Vintage Collection, and that's the Skiff Master. He's VC48. This was a great character because it was our first Weequay in a while since the original one, and he's completely different character. Nice face mold. I think he had a re-release at one point, so he might be a little bit cheaper to get in the secondary market. Also from 2011, we have Khetanna here in the Vintage Collection. He's number 56. This guy is the same species as Barada, but you can see completely different character. He's got those spiffy red pants as opposed to his brother in species over there with the blue pants. Next up, we got the Weequay, and he was from 2012, and that's VC 107. And this is the best version of the Weequay we've gotten so far. Drastically redesigned. I love that face sculpt on him. And he's just much better than the previous versions. The ones in the Legacy Collection had these really flimsy force spikes, so I'm glad to have a good version of him. After that, we have VC 141 Chewbacca here, and he's from 2018. Now, I realize this is the Star Wars version, but I think he's the best version for this. You can see he's kind of got this painting on the front that makes him look like he's been in a sandstorm as well, and I think it just kind of fits. I know there is a Sandstorm Chewbacca from, I'm not sure which collection, but essentially he has a brace on his leg, and I think that ruins the look. So I went for a cleaner look here, and I think it just works, essentially. After that, we shift over to back to 2018 still, but we shift over to Lando here, and that's Lando Skiff Guard, number 144 in the Vintage Collection. That was a Walmart exclusive. Difference between Palace Lando and Lando Skiff Guard, of course, is the belt where you can see the holster here for the blaster. Now, as you can see on the card, he still has the Palace look, but they call him Lando Skiff Guard. So that's just the difference, having the holster. There are versions without the holster, but for our purposes, we do want him with the holster, so this just works. For my Han Solo right here, I went with the 2019 Han Carbonite, and this was the 2-pack from the Jabba's Palace Adventure set that also came with Riaz. So he's number 136. I think he just really worked here. He's got this great disheveled look in his shirt, and he's just perfect for this scene. He came with the binders, so I was already equipped and I didn't need to look for little binders to put on him in the scene. And he also came with leg binders, and they're perfect for a Wookiee. So it kind of really just worked out to include this Han in this set. So shifting over here from the front of the ship to the back of the skiff, we have Vidane from 2019, and that was another character in that 3-pack. And this is number 152. If you were paying attention before, we told you Brock Starsher was essentially the character from the other part of the 3-pack. And the third one we'll show you later is Vizim, here be on the inside. So this is our skiff driver, Vidane. We're glad we finally got this guy, so now we have drivers for both skiffs. So he just kind of rounds out the character set. And the last character we have over here is from 2019, and that's going to be our Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight. Now, this was part of a 3-pack. He also came with Luke Stormtrooper and Luke X-Wing Fighter Pilot. Later on in 2020, we did get him individually numbered as number 175 in the collection. But you noticed why I went with this Luke over other Lukes is, one, he looks great. He's one of the best Jedi Knight Lukes I've seen. Two, he doesn't have that glove on or any damage on that hand. And in this scene, he did not. So I think it's perfect to have this clean-cut Luke to go in toward the Sarlacc pit for the scene. And it just works. So this is what I want with this set. We're almost complete on this barge. I think there's just one more character. It was a human. I don't recall his name. But we're very close to rounding this one out. And hopefully we'll get him soon. But that's all for the skiffs. Next up, we're going to move inside the barge. Okay, I figured the best way to do this is in chunks. So chunk one, I'm just going to start on the upper deck. Of course, with everyone's favorite, the Gamorrean Guard here. Now, the Gamorrean Guard had a lot of releases. This is based on the Vintage Collection release. The original release, he was VC21, and this was 2018. Came with a lot of accessories. Now, there's, I believe, 7 total Gamorrean Guards that were in Jabba's palace. One got eaten, so that leaves 6. It's unclear how many were on the barge. I watched the scene a lot, but I just couldn't figure out exactly how many. I went with 3 total. One of them I have on the deck. There's this scene where the barge is making its way out to the pit, and you see one on top. So I just put this guy up here on this end. And this is where I warned you, we're going to move a little bit here. And we're going to go over to the other side of the barge. And we have our lowly skiff guard here at the back. This was the other guy you could see in the scene. And this is going to be Klaatu, skiff guard. He's VC 135. He also came out in 2018. Pretty sharp looking figure. He was, I think this was he was originally in the Power of the Force, and then this was the first release since then in this deco. So looks pretty sharp. Glad to have him in the Vintage Collection. There weren't many other people on the barge when it wasn't being attacked by Luke, so this was essentially it. So really easy to fill out the top of your barge with these 2 characters, and that's all you really need. The only thing I really wish here is that these sails were a little higher. I feel like they were in the movie. They probably could have used another 6 inches and this would have been perfect, because they're kind of really right onto the top of the characters, particularly as you saw that Gamorrean Guard. So I think 6 inches higher on these sails and this thing would have just been amazing. But I can't complain. I love the barge. So why don't we start going inside, and we'll divide this up into little chunks and show you all the characters. All right, going to be taking you in a little bit closer, taking a look at the inside of the barge here. We get a lot of different characters. So I'm going to divide this up into halves. So in our first half here, I'm going to be going again chronologically, figures from the oldest to the newest in the series. So we're going to start in the way back here. You could just make her out, but this is going to be Cy Snoodles from the 1998 Power of the Force 2, and they have not made a new version of her. So this is it. I kind of regret that they didn't make any of the Max Rebo band after Power of the Force 2 line, but she was on the barge. You could see her in some of the shots. The puppet was there. It's just unfortunate we don't have a new version, but I think this Power of the Force 2 one still looks pretty good, particularly in the background. So you don't need to really worry about that too much. Next up, we're going to travel forward a decade to 2009 in the Legacy line, and you can see back here we have our Nikto Gunner. I don't believe they made a new version of this character since then. He looks pretty good, and I kind of think a lot of the legacy characters, they repackaged and put them in Vintage Collection and maybe gave him a new color scheme. So he holds up pretty well too. He came with this little cannon over here, and the big thing at the time when this barge was advertised was, will we be able to clip it to the rails? And they did, in fact, make some sections of the rail where you could actually clip that gun on. So I kind of stuck it over here. I think it fits perfectly in this little galley area that if you needed to defend the barge, you could grab it on your way up the stairs right here. So it kind of worked, and I think it fits there really nicely. So it's a good way to display it. So next up, moving forward to the, still in the Legacy Collection, 2010, we have the Salacious B. Crumb here. He came in that Jabba's throne room, or Jabba's throne set. So it was a nice set, came with a bunch of characters, and I still use that. I think it's one of the best ones Hasbro has ever made. And when we asked if it would fit into the upcoming Bib Fortuna, Boba Fett's palace, whatever you want to call it, it indeed does. So that's great if you want to keep that stone dais into your new set. He was also released again, I think it's the same exact character, but in 2011 in the Vintage Collection, he was number 66. But it's the same character, I think. He's got great posability, and he just kind of fits there. Moving forward now to the Vintage Collection, in 2010, we're going to have Wolf, and you could just make him out here in the back with his little furry skirt. One of my favorite characters. He was both in the palace and in the scene. He was just kind of like that creepy guy on the card with his, or the card back, or in some promotional shots with his hands out. So he's there in the back, still looking creepy. Still in the Vintage Collection. So 2010, we have R2-D2, and that's VC25. You could just make him out in the back there next to Boba Fett serving drinks. This one was just called R2-D2 on the card, not R2-D2 Jabba's servant or bartender or whatever. So that, or sail barge, they just called him R2-D2. And that was VC25. So next up, moving forward to 2011 in the Vintage Collection, and we have VC64, and that's Leia's Slave. And this was one of the best ones they made. I think it's very similar to the Legacy one. But again, one of the best ones, very narrow character, hard to get her to stand up. So I had to use a little bit of piece of poster tack to get her to stand up here because there's no peg holes on the sail barge floor, which is fine. I think that would ruin the aesthetic anyway. So don't mind that. So I think she's the best version of this character for this scene. Next up, into the Black Series, 2015, we have some Jawas here. There are a couple Jawas sprinkled throughout the scene. And what I wanted to do is get a little variety. I know there's a Vintage Collection Jawa, you're going to see it later on, but I wanted a little variety in the coloring and the way they look. I didn't want the same character over and over again. This character here is from a 2016 Droid Series pack, an Entertainment Earth exclusive, and this is Jabba's other bartender droid. You do see him briefly in one scene. It wasn't just R2 serving drinks. That would be kind of tough with a crowd that big, so it's good to have help. And this little guy came in a 6-pack. He might be tough to track down, but he was also there. So you kind of need him to round out your scene. We have another Gamorrean guard here from 2018. Again, it's VC21. There were a couple, like I said, throughout, so I kind of got them sprinkled them around just to kind of fill out the scene. I got this one in the doorway over here protecting the characters. In 2019, we got the sail barge, but we also got this exclusive Vintage Collection Jabba. He only came in the sail barge. He was not individually packaged. And he can separate from this base, but it's kind of form-fitting to him. But he looks really great, and I think he's perfect for this. He comes with it. He's fit for it, so I didn't need to change this Jabba out at all. So next we have 2019 as well. We have Vizim. He's right over here, and he's from that 3-pack I was telling you about. He's VC 153, so this is the third character in that set. It looks pretty great there. A little bit of a drastic redesign from his Power of the Force 2 look. He's also there in the doorway shot. Nothing. I think he was in between the areas when I was looking at the scene, so I kind of have him there in the doorway. And last but not least, the most recent character from 2021 Vintage Collection, we have the Boba Fett Return of the Jedi, number 186. And this is the best Boba Fett Jedi so far that I've seen. He's not the most recent Boba Fett, of course. There's a lot more. But he looks really great. He's got a lot of rusting going on the blaster and whatnot. I think he's just perfect for the scene, and he was sort of doing security detail in the background. So he really rounds it out and is the most recent character you're going to see on this half of the barge, at least. And that is our primary audience chamber. We're going to move over to the crowd area next. Okay, rounding out our barge, we have the more crowded section. So I'll be going over a ton of guys over here. I'm going to be starting again in the order of release of the figures. And first up, we got Max Rebo, the band leader here with his round keyboard. Yes, I did fit him in. He keyboard and all. You can do it. There is space to fit him and all these other characters. So not a waste at all. This was 1998, Power of the Force 2. I don't believe he got another release. He had one release before this when he came out around 84, 85 in the original line in Kenner. So we do need a new Max Rebo. It's been a while. Behind him is another one of his band members, and that's Droopy McCool. Again, 1998, Power of the Force 2 line. I don't believe we got another release, and if we did, it would have been the same mold. So these guys you'll have to track down in the secondary market, but they were unfortunately on the sale barge when it went up. Sucks for them. Up here in the front, we have Tesk. Now, this is from one of my favorite lines, Power of the Jedi line. That was 2000. I don't believe we got another Tesk since then, but he's a pretty good mold, actually. He's got a little blaster in there underneath the cape. He's got the layering. They did a pretty good job with this for the time, and I think he sort of held up the test of time. And he's looking pretty sharp, but again, we could definitely use a new version of him. It's just been so long. I think we're way overdue. So in the back here, we have a pair of characters, command a huge premium in the secondary market and haven't been released since then. But in the Saga collection, we have Tanis Spyjic right there in the back on the side, and then Jaquill over here. Both of these came out in 2004 on that Saga collection, never released again. They look awesome. I think they still hold up. They were sort of larger characters. But they have not been remade, so you're going to have to try to acquire these from eBay or somewhere else. Tricky to track down. I recall they were maybe up in the triple digits at the time, 5, 6 years ago. I don't know where they are now. But sharp-looking figures. They kind of round out and give you that more of an alien feel to it, which I really appreciated. So those are all the older characters that they haven't been remade since then. And now we have newer versions of the other characters I'll be showing you. Special mention, though, over here, this is an Ishi-Tib from the 98 Power of the Force collection. Now, Ishi-Tib was not on Jabba's sail barge, but one of the species were. So basically, I just removed his outer jacket here. You can see in the plastic is an outer jacket, and I think he fits in the scene because you do see one of his species there, and then I think it rounds out this whole scene here to have him in there. I wouldn't consider this custom because I didn't add anything to him. I just took his jacket off, and he kind of fits in the scene now with that more earth tone look. So way to fill it out without going into the realm of customs. Over here, we have our C-3PO holding the little announcement wand or whatever. This is VTC 6, really from the beginning of the line. So this is 2010. I think he looks pretty good in the scene. Of course, I'd prefer a shiny version like we saw with the original trilogy collection C-3PO, but I didn't want to open mine to put him in there. So I think this VTC 6 is he's a decent fill-in for that. Right behind him, glaring, you see Bosk. Now, this is Bosk in the Vintage collection. He was in a 3-pack Imperial Forces. And I think that was just a re-release of an older Bosk. They didn't really change anything on him. It was either Black Series or Legacy Collection Bosk. He had great paint applications. It looked really good, but he hasn't got his own card back yet. So, as I recall, in the Vintage Collection. But that is Bosk. He was on the sail barge there as well. So here's one I always mess up in pronouncing. We just call him Yak Face, but it's Silt Murray, and if that is correct. He's VC 132, and he came out around the same time or just before the barge in 2018. And of course, he had an exclusive release on that Power of the Force with the coin that came with the barge, but this is the individual issuance of him. And 2018 might be the year he was packaged, but might not have made shelves until 2019. But there he is, essential character to be on the barge. Most people associate him there. And then after him, we have VC-137, and that is the Riaz here, also carded as 2018, but he came out in that 2019 Jabba's Palace Adventure 2-pack set. He had his own card back at the time, so looking really sharp here. He had, first filling in the seating here. He was right up against the window, so that's where he was in that scene. So you can see him glaring out with that smile. I think it's perfect. Of course, again, we have another Gamorrean guard. You can see right there behind Yak Face. We already went over that one. That's VC-21 in 2018. Here, just keep making an appearance throughout. Here's when I talked about variety in the Jawas. Here's my vintage collection Jawa now, and this is number 161 from 2019. And he's got sort of a different color scheme, different bandolier. I just wanted to give a little variety so it didn't look like the same Jawa over and over again. So there's ways you could mix them up. There were a lot of Jawas through a lot of the lines, but this is the most recent Jawa we got. He came, of course, on a Star Wars card back, not a Return of the Jedi card back, but I made him a Return of the Jedi Jawa in this instance. And the last but not least, the most recent character to be released here is going to be this Bib Fortuna. This was 2022, and this was VC 224. And huge improvement over the previous bibs. I love the cloth there. I don't think they had that hidden dagger anymore that was on the front. So great paint applications, the best looking bib so far. And he was just here in the background sneering through the window as well. And he kind of rounds out this look. Of course, there were other characters, but they just haven't made them yet. But this is pretty crowded. On this side, you can see I've used all the space I can, and I still fit in that Max Rebo keyboard circular piano thing. So you could definitely fill out a barge and give a nice full look. And I'll pan out a little here, and you can see the totality of the barge of all these characters. And it gives you that sense that the scene is pretty full. And we have characters ranging throughout this area here. And there are probably more in the galley section, making food or preparing drinks to put on the droids. But I think in the movie, we only got to see this room. And it was a little wider maybe, but I think it still works. It's, of course, going to be hard to make this thing scale, but it can still let you display a lot of your characters when you take these panels off. Of course, there was a panel or two that ranged across here, and then another one in the front, so this was all closed off. But looks pretty good when you have all your characters in it, and it's a great way to display them as well. Well, here we are. Thanks for joining me on that journey through the barge. I knew I threw a lot of characters at you, a lot of dates, a lot of collections, a lot of information. So hopefully this was useful to you guys as you try to build out your barge. Of course, there's no wrong way to do it. I mean, you could customize it, put whoever you want on there, Captain Kirk if you want to throw him in. But for me, this was the most accurate I can make it based on what is available and produced from Hasbro and what was in that scene in the film, that one particular scene before Luke leaps off the skiff and then attacks the barge, and everything changes. Everyone's position changes, obviously. But from what I can gather from the characters I could see, this is the best representation I can make. Maybe you come up with something better. Offer some suggestions in the comments if we missed a character that's out there that we didn't put on the barge. Of course, there's stuff up to debate because it goes into what about deleted scenes? We saw characters that weren't there. I'm going with what was in the movie. So if there is a production still or a deleted scene, I'm not counting that because it ended up changing canon later on and it just gets a little messy. So this is what was in the movie that we could see in that scene and put together for you guys to try to round out your own barge. I know it's going to be difficult to get some of these characters because they're only going to be through the secondary market. Some of them are being reissued and reoffered, so you have a better chance, but some of them are kind of long gone and they're commanding a premium now. So hopefully this was useful to you guys. Of course, I'm going to be bringing you more videos like this. I'm thinking I have a couple of options to do next, and one I really want to do is going to be called The Plastic Sands of Tatooine. We're going to be going over all the different Tatooine playsets. There's going to be some rules in that one. It's got to have plastic, so we might be diverging away from some of the cardboard playsets, but we'll see. So look for that one next. I got a surprise one for later in the year, but we will definitely have different expansive looks like this, so keep checking back. Keep like, subscribe, and follow. There's always something new on Rebelscum every day. And we definitely like you guys coming back and sharing with us what you like about things, what you don't like about things, what you'd like to see. Give us some ideas and help us to try to do different projects here. takes a lot of time to research and put these things together, and it also depends on what we have or can get our hands on. So some things are really difficult to do, but we'll try to make it happen if we can. So that is all for this time. So you guys tune back for our next set next month. And until then, stay vigilant, you rebel scum.